It was a crisp, quiet morning in the Scottish Highlands. The kind of morning where the mist hangs low over the heather and the wind whistles secrets through the ancient pines. Near Balmoral Castle, tucked away from the pressures of Buckingham Palace and Westminster formality, Queen Elizabeth II was doing what she loved most on such mornings, walking her dogs. There was no royal motorcade, no entourage, no trumpets or waving crowds. Just Her Majesty in a headscarf and Barber jacket, a simple walking stick in hand, and a few of her corgis trotting ahead, blissfully unaware of their role in one of the most charming royal stories to ever unfold. Beside her was a man dressed casually, though anyone in the know would immediately clock him as a royal protection officer. Tall, broad, watchful, the kind of presence that said bodyguard without ever saying a word. They often took these walks together. Balmoral, after all, wasn't just a royal estate, it was home. A place where the Queen could escape the endless obligations, the choreographed handshakes, the carefully worded speeches. Here, she was just Elizabeth, a woman who loved nature, dogs, and a good, long walk. But even in this secluded pocket of Scotland, anonymity was a delicate gift. And on this particular morning, fate had a rather entertaining surprise waiting along the trail. From the bend in the path emerged a small group of tourists, American by the sound of their accents. Hiking boots, backpacks, guidebooks in hand. They looked a little lost but cheerful, the way people do when they're not entirely sure where they are but are too excited to care. As they approached, their eyes met the Queen's, but there was no spark of recognition. No gasps, no stammering, no camera flashes. They just saw an elderly British woman, dressed for the weather, walking her dogs with a friend. One of them stepped forward and gave a polite nod. "Lovely day for a walk, isn't it?" The Queen smiled warmly. "It is indeed," she replied in the clipped, unmistakable cadence of the royal voice, though to the tourists, it simply registered as very British. The conversation continued. Light, casual, pleasant. They asked if she lived nearby. "I do," she said, gesturing vaguely toward the vast estate behind the trees. One of them squinted at the hills in the distance. "That's Balmoral Castle, isn't it? Have you ever been inside?" The Queen, utterly composed, entirely amused, tilted her head slightly. "Oh yes," she said, "many times." Still nothing. The group nodded approvingly, probably assuming she was a staff member. Maybe the head cook. Or a retired housekeeper taking a morning stroll. Then came the question. The one that would elevate this moment from charming to legendary. "Have you ever met the Queen?" Time stopped. The birds probably kept chirping, but no one could hear them. It was one of those golden moments, the kind that hangs in the air like suspended laughter. The Queen, without missing a beat, smiled mischievously and replied, "No, but he has." She casually pointed to her security officer. "Now, let's pause for just a moment. Not in the story, but in your mind. Imagine standing face to face with the Queen of England and asking her if she's ever met the Queen. And she doesn't correct you. Doesn't offer even a wink. Just plays along with the elegance of someone who spent her entire life reigning but still knows how to have fun." The tourists turned to the security officer, now the center of sudden interest. He played along too, his face struggling to stay straight. "Well then," one of them said, "you must have some stories." "I do," he replied diplomatically. "But I'm afraid I can't share most of them." They all laughed. One of the women pulled out her phone and turned to the Queen. "Would you mind taking a photo of us with him?" And so it was that Queen Elizabeth II, sovereign of 16 realms, commander of the British Armed Forces, defender of the faith, took a few steps back, held the phone steady, and snapped a picture of a group of tourists posing with her security officer. They smiled. She smiled. Her dogs, probably unimpressed, barked in the background. Once the photo was done, the tourists thanked her and went on their way, never knowing they had just met the Queen herself, and had even asked her to take their picture. As they disappeared into the trees, she turned to her bodyguard and let out a quiet chuckle. It wasn't just funny. It was perfect. In a life defined by protocol, precision, and pageantry, moments like this were rare and precious. And Elizabeth loved them. Later, the officer who accompanied her that day would share the story publicly. Not in a tabloid splash or a Netflix drama, but in a respectful interview, years later, reflecting on the many sides of the monarch that the public rarely got to see. She had a brilliant sense of humor, he said. Moments like that, she adored them. Because beneath the royal titles and duties, beneath the wave from the balcony persona, was a woman who genuinely appreciated wit, irony, and the absurdity of her own life. Think about it. How many people on earth could say they asked the Queen of England if she'd ever met the Queen? And how many queens would have the grace and cheek to play along? Not many. Maybe only one. And that's what made her so unforgettable. The Queen who met presidents and popes. The Queen who lived through wars and revolutions, coronations and crises. The Queen who ruled for over 70 years, across generations, across eras. Was also the Queen who could hold your phone, snap your vacation photo, and walk away without ever revealing who she was. She didn't need the spotlight to prove who she was. She didn't need the recognition. She knew. And perhaps in that moment, it was more fun that they didn't. Because real power doesn't always need to announce itself. Sometimes it just smiles, takes the photo, and disappears down the path, corgis in tow. And only later, much later, do you realize just how close you stood to history.